Live your life within the moment. And don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night away.
Before we begin, please listen to the following public service announcement from the Honorable and late Judy Heumann. Judy is the former United States Assistant Secretary of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services in the Clinton administration and the former U.S. State Department Special Advisor for International Disability Rights in the Obama administration. Recently, Judy starred in the Netflix documentary Crip Camp.
Hello, my name is Judy Heumann. I'm here today to encourage you to please take your COVID vaccine. And if you have friends and family that haven't, please encourage them also. COVID is to be taken seriously. In addition to taking the vaccine, please use other protective methods. Wear a mask, use gloves, and sanitize frequently. If you need additional information and you live in Eastern Oregon, you can contact EOCIL. Thank you, and protect yourselves and the community.
And welcome everyone to Voices in Action, a podcast by Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living, a global disability resource and advocacy center, and I'm your host, Amador Perez. Over the course of seasons 2 and 3, we're going to be covering a variety of topics that relate to EOCIL's core priorities, which include but aren't limited to disability actionable research, disability crisis and emergency response services, HIV prevention and harm reduction services, and many more. And if you'd like a rundown of all the services we do offer, I encourage everyone to check us out online at www.eocil.org. We will be speaking to individuals with lived experiences, leaders of global and local advocacy organizations, and people responsible for developing and implementing policies that affect our daily lives, and we're going to learn from each other along the way. And today we're going to be speaking with Mary Ellen Buxton, the Assistant Director of the 2Spirit and LGBTQIA plus resource services. Mary, if you'd like to give a quick introduction of who you are, that'd be great.
So I'm Mary Ellen, pronouns they, them. I was raised in Ontario, Oregon, and I have lived in La Grande, Oregon for the last 5 years while I studied at Eastern Oregon University. I've worked for EOCIL since December of 2022. And that's kind of me for now.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and being able to kind of discuss some of the topics I have listed here. So I kind of wanted to go over your story of kind of how you grew up, the household, because knowing you through working here, you're very you, like you don't care what people think. I've heard plenty of good stories from like Richard, another worker here at EOCIL, and he just always praises you for your expressionality, if that makes sense. So I kind of wanted to sit down and kind of dive into that and figure out kind of like how was your household life growing up in like high school, going through college, where you see a lot of news articles nowadays where people are being discriminated or harassed in school settings. Just recently, we had a panel yesterday where we talked with parents who had a child in the school system who was being discriminated, harassed, and bullied, right? So I kind of want to talk about what your experience was throughout your life from high school onto like college, getting your degree and graduating, and to where you are right now. So how was your household life? Did you grow up in a really open family, or is it more conservative coming from Eastern Oregon?
Well, kind of both. So I was raised in the LDS church and was baptized when I was 8 years old. And so I was surrounded by conservative and religious ideology, but my parents weren't like really good Mormons. Like they said bad words and they drank caffeine, and but never coffee, of course. And so I grew up going to church until I was about 15 or so, and then someone from my church helped me. Uh, I was starting to drift from the church, and they said that they would teach me how to drive if I would go to church. So I was going to church again when I was about 15, 16, and then I got my license and I got my first job, and I made sure that I was incredibly available on Sundays for my job. And so then I was able to kind of weasel my way out of church. But I wasn't super faithful from like a really young age. Like I was really critical of just the things that they were teaching us. Kind of like if you do something good, if you do something good for someone and you feel good on the inside, that's the Holy Ghost. Or if you're in a sketchy situation and you don't feel really good about it and you think that you should leave, that's the Holy Ghost. And I was like, or you're recognizing patterns and you're getting dopamine from doing kind acts and things like that. So from a very young age, was critical of the church. And then just kind of once I was older and had a little bit of autonomy, I was able to get out of the church. And obviously my parents weren't like super pleased about that, but I've always had kind of a weird dynamic with my parents where I've been like the third adult in the house. So when I was probably in like 8th grade, I kind of started to get an idea that I wasn't heterosexual. And I started to get the idea that maybe I might be bisexual. But I didn't talk about it with anyone. And because a lot of my friends were still in the church. And also we were in middle school and we were in Eastern Oregon. So it wasn't like a huge thing that was talked about.
Yeah. Did you know of any other 8th graders or kids around your age that were out and open?
At some point in 8th grade, my really close friend came out, and it was a really interesting way that they came out. We were writing essays in our like writing class, and we had to do like an argumentative essay, and I did mine on like exotic animals shouldn't be pets or something like that. And he did his on legalizing gay marriage. And like we were reading our essays to the class, and he was like, as a gay person was like his introduction. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. And I think everyone was like, oh my God. And so that kind of opened my eyes, and I was like, I didn't even realize that was a thing, because I had only seen it as like comedic outlets and different things, like two guys kissing on like Saturday Night Live or something is like a joke. And my parents didn't react to those jokes very well, and so I was like, okay, that's something that's gross and not an option. But I also at the same time was never like, I don't think I was ever homophobic, because I know like a lot of people like when they're like raised in the church, they like have like they're built up with those ideologies and then they eventually like have to break them down. I think I was always neutral to it because my parents were like mostly neutral to it, but like also against it. Yeah. But it wasn't like a main topic. Like we weren't talking about it. So there wasn't like room for hateful talk, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. There was just no talk about it. So like take that as you will. But so around like 8th grade, friend came out and that came to my attention, and I just kind of stewed on that for a little while. And then I think I came out to Richard, the one you mentioned, in like high school, and probably came out to a few other people, like the friend that had come out in middle school, just as like bi. I think I probably came out as pan.
And for people who don't know that, because some like, I remember when I first heard that, I wasn't quite sure what pansexual meant. And I know there's like a variety of different terms that people use to like help identify what they're feeling or what their attractions are, or mm-hmm. how they, present themselves. So for those listening in who might not know, what does it mean to be pan or pansexual?
So like if you break down the word parts, pan means like all kind of. And so bisexuality implies being attracted to two genders. And then pansexuality implies like being attracted to all genders, but also a disclaimer, there's a discourse between like, if you're saying that bisexuality is only two genders, then there's room for like transphobic interpretations where like
Yeah.
I'm only attracted to like cisgendered men, cisgendered women, and pansexuality would imply like other gender expressions like non-binary and trans people, etc. So I've gone back and forth myself on like whether or not I identify as bi or pan, because of like the different interpretations of both of those words. And
Yeah.
so I've kind of come to the conclusion that I identify as bi, but that includes all gender expressions. Like some people say that like the bi flag is pink, purple, and blue, and some people say that like the purple represents like other gender expressions.
Yeah.
So yeah, pansexuality is supposed to be like all genders. But
it's just in the form in which you interpret it, right?
Yeah. So like you can really go with either depending on what you say and believe.
Yeah. And then, so how do you go about navigating that? Because you want to be inclusive to everyone and not like exclude anyone. But when you're trying to use these terms and there's conflicting opinions within the same community about that, how do you know to navigate that so that way you're not stepping on anyone's toes or hurting anyone or excluding anyone? Because the whole purpose is to be all inclusive, but you also need to find a way to define yourself and, let people know that this is what my terms are and what they mean to me.
Isn't that tough?
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem like a hard thing to navigate? All of these terms are just tools for communication, just to help convey yourself to other people so that, you can navigate society, I guess. So I don't know, I guess just conversations help. Like depending on the setting, I might use the word pan. But if I have the time, I would have like a conversation kind of like this with a person and be like, I'm bi, but like all genders, etc. Like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted you to kind of like break that down because I know it's kind of important, especially if you want to get like a really good understanding of, some of the words that are being used. So that way you're not misrepresenting someone or causing any harm that way. So we can go back to what you were saying. So you said like in 8th grade, you were kind of switching back and forth between whether you were bi or pan. Was there any like moment though that you kind of knew you weren't following the norm around town, so to say? Was there,
Probably.
or was it just something that you kind of like the feeling or whatever it was kind of kept growing and growing, or was there something that you knew just that moment you're like, I'm not like everyone else around me?
Well, I think first of all, haven't even gotten to the non-binary part because that came in college. But from a very young age, I was always like not like other girls, and that's like internalized misogyny, among other things. But from a very young age, I was like, okay, I'm a little different, and I was always a tomboy, and so in that way, I feel like I stood out, where I very intentionally didn't want like girly things, and there's a few reasons for that, but and then in 8th grade about like other sexualities became apparent to me like through my friend coming out. But I think when I was 14, I was at church camp actually, and I remember seeing this girl in like basketball shorts and like a baseball cap, and I was like, oh my god, she's got something going on.
Yeah.
And it was at church camp, and I think that was like the first time that I like ever had like a crush on a girl, and I was like, okay, something's occurred, something's different now. So that's probably like the most, if I had to like boil it down to a point, it would probably be like that summer.
Yeah, because I only ask because being through this job, I've been able to connect with quite a bit of people who are part of the community, and everyone's a little bit different. And I know, like, just reading online, doing my own research, reading testimonials, people's blogs, their stories that they put out there. Some of them say like, oh, when I was in 8th grade, just using a similar example to what you were giving, they say, oh, I saw this boy that I just felt this sudden attraction to him, this connection that I haven't felt with any other girl, or vice versa. And some people was like, I was questioning myself, never really had a thing, and then I just kind of tried it, just experimenting, and I found that it was way more satisfactory to me than what I thought it was going to be. So a lot of people struggle with trying to figure out who they are, like even at a young age. Because how old are you when you're in eighth grade?
About 14,
14.
13,
That's
14.
still quite young to be able to kind of like fully understand what you like or what you know. And especially a lot of people have different development stages. So some people struggle with it and they don't figure out that they're either like bisexual, straight, trans until later on in life. A perfect example is a person I interviewed on this podcast. Actually, she was actually one of my first guests, Timmy Turnley. She lived as a male for 30 some years, got married twice, got married a third time, I believe, if I'm remembering the story correctly, um, in order to hide the fact that she was trans. And now she's come out. She's living her best life. She comes into the office regularly. She's gonna have surgery done soon to, go into a full transition into woman. And then it took her so long to be able to do that. So for some people, it does take a while, and some people they just know at a moment's notice, like it just hits them.
Mhm.
So that's really great. And when you were there, though, did you kind of feel shame because it was at a church camp, right? You were saying that. Did you feel any type of way? Like, were there conflicting thoughts with like the way you were raised in a religious household, and then having this idea that this girl just looked just different?
Well, at this point, I was already like so far removed personally from the church that
Okay.
I was having a good
Yeah.
time. I did not mind at all. So I never really experienced any shameful feelings for
Mhm.
any like homosexuality. Just because, like I was saying, like from a very young age, I was very critical of the church.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, though, I didn't like come out to anybody for some more years. I came out to my mom as bisexual when I was 16, when I had my first girlfriend, and that went okay. She actually she didn't respond in like a hateful way or anything. She did tell me it was a phase. And my favorite part was her saying, well, we all have feelings like that. And I was like, Mom, I don't think we all do, but apparently you do. Um, so yeah. And then very shortly after, I probably came out to my dad, and he was less pleased. But like I said earlier, there was always the weird dynamic where I was kind of the third adult. So it was
Yeah.
kind of like, I was like, take it or leave it. I'm not really worried about what you think.
Oh wow. And did anything change within your house or within your home after you told them? Like, did they treat you any differently? Were they more open? Were they more curious and wanting to understand?
I feel like it kind of got brushed aside, except for when I like brought it up.
Hmm.
So it kind of remained the same, where homosexuality wasn't like, it wasn't positively talked about. It just wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in like a secret way or anything like that. It just like wasn't really a thing. But my mom did meet my partner at the time, and I think my dad probably did too. And yeah, my family's always been a little weird as far as
Yeah.
Mormons go, where they've been really accepting.
Really.
Like they were a lot less conservative than the other people in our church growing up. So that kind of gave me the room to even attempt coming out. Um, and my younger sibling, so I was an only child until I was 7. And then I had a younger sibling in 2007. And they came out to me a few years ago as gay and non-binary. And I think I kind of crawled so that they could run,
Yeah.
because now my parents are like super supportive, like very actively, like, when like older relatives find out that you like a thing, like like Hello Kitty or something, and then they get everything Hello Kitty
Yeah.
for you for like Christmas and birthdays and everything forever, even after you don't like it. My mom gets us like all kinds of rainbow stuff like all
Yeah.
the time because she's like, it's the gay stuff. You
Yeah.
like it, right? And yeah, so they're really supportive now,
That's great.
even though they're both still in the church.
Yeah. Wow. And how and so your home life was really supportive. How about in school later on? So throughout like high school, you never came out or
I like kind of casually came out to like the people around me. Like I
like
wasn't secretive like ever.
yeah.
I've always been like a pretty open book, like kind of take it or leave it.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I guess I did come out in high school, I guess, but like not as like a big old hullabaloo because I don't think anyone cared.
Yeah, you weren't there just praising it to everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone you see shaking
Well,
their
and like
hand.
yeah, and I don't think it was like a huge like reveal, like because I
Yeah.
was a little weird
Okay.
just to begin with. And so it was just something like if it came up, yeah, I would mention it, but yeah, it never really was a big deal.
Okay. And then how about now moving from high school then to college where you spent how long there?
4 years.
4 years. And what were you studying there?
I studied a few things. I studied history as my major, and then I minored in art for a little while, and then I minored in Spanish for a little while, and then I minored in speakers of other languages, or English for speakers of other languages.
Oh, wow.
Because I was planning on being a teacher, because I've always wanted to be a resource and an advocate for rural students. And but teaching was always like kind of a plan B. And then it finally came time for plans to be enacted, and I didn't have a plan A. And so I worked in Head Start for a little bit and then came here.
Oh, wow. And how was your college life then? Was it a campus that was open or hush hush about that stuff? Were you getting excluded, treated differently by any of the professors or staff? Or were there a lot of like I don't know, people against that, like students wise that were there on campus?
I think there were definitely students there that were against it because Eastern Oregon University is Oregon's rural university.
Yeah.
And so there's a very significant conservative presence there. But I just kind of like in middle school and high school and home, like I was kind of like take it or leave it. And it wasn't like a really big deal. So I didn't really face any real adversity, though I did witness others who did. But I was lucky enough to have like supervisors on campus that were incredibly supportive. And I think I was just in spaces where there was acceptance. Like I spent the first 3 years in the residence halls or the dorms. And like the first year I lived there, and then the next 2 years I lived and worked there. And my supervisors were very supportive. And like a lot of the other Res Life staff were also queer. And so that was helpful that there was a lot of us. Well, maybe not a lot of us, but there were a few of us.
Enough to make it count.
Enough to make it count.
Yeah.
And yeah, didn't fit. Oh, and I mean, there weren't a lot of resources. There was I don't remember the acronym for it. I think the GRSA. I don't remember the acronym, but there was a gay club, if you will, for some years, and I think they stopped doing things around COVID or maybe a little bit before COVID because I think the officers aged out or something like that. So there were kind of resources, but they weren't ones that I accessed.
Okay. Yeah, because like piggybacking off of that, then did you try to look for any kind of like material or resources when you were younger, like when you started like questioning, like and around the eighth grade high school? Was there any resources that you sought out as well? Or you didn't really, they just weren't known, or you didn't really know where to look?
I don't think I knew where to look, and I don't think I had a real desire to look
Mhm.
that I recall. But I did use like social media. Like I used Tumblr a lot in high school, and there was so I like witnessed and took part in like a lot of like queer media, and so I
Yeah.
think that helped normalize it for me. Um, and reading like queer fan fiction and other nerdy things like that.
Okay.
But I didn't look for like I definitely wasn't like looking for resources at like the high school, and there wasn't a GSA when I was in high school or middle school. Like I didn't even know that that was a thing until college.
Oh wow. And the GSA, what do they do exactly?
So GSA stands for, sometimes it's read as Gay Straight Alliance, and sometimes it's like a gender sexuality alliance. But essentially it's kind of like a queer resource club.
Okay.
And so it's just kind of like a safe place for students to go and like organize and meet and do things together, whether it be like fundraising for activities or just spending time together.
Okay. Well, speaking about like spending time together, so I know that right now you're as your current position, you currently have a what is it? Youth peer mentoring, or what is it?
We
The
have a 2S LGBTQIA plus youth network, and then we also have
okay.
an after school 2S LGBTQIA plus youth drop-in center.
You've drop-in center. So those two are pretty big because you mentioned that there wasn't very much that you were aware of younger, and then you always wanted to kind of, teach, so to say, and work with the youth. And now you're actually doing that. How did you come to get to that position and be able to like start those two programs and be able to offer this to people who are interested?
Mhm. Well, I think that the stars kind of just aligned in like just the right way at just the right
Yeah.
time. Because as I mentioned, so I graduated from Eastern Oregon University in June of 2022, and then I started working in Head Start, in early Head Start. So I was working with babies and toddlers, which is so interesting because growing up, when I was considering teaching, I always said that I wanted to teach either high schoolers or college because I thought that middle schoolers were too angry and little kids were too sticky, and I thought that like high school and college was just tired enough that I could handle them.
Yeah.
And then throughout college I had teaching experiences with middle schoolers and with littles, and I was like, oh my gosh, both of these populations are actually really chill if you just treat them like people. Because I mean, like I remember getting a little pissed off when like being questioned about going to the bathroom and things like that. Like you gotta treat them like people.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I worked in Head Start for a little while, and then a position opened up as a harm reduction specialist here with EOCIL, and I took that position. Well, actually, it was offered when I was already working at EOU Head Start, and I declined the position and told them about Richard, and then a few months later, Richard got a promotion, and so the harm reduction specialist position opened up again, and I was considering it, and then I took it, and I was the harm reduction specialist in LeGrand for like 3 months, maybe 2 months, I think, and then EOCIL had been trying for this grant from the Oregon Department of Education for I don't know how long, but they've been trying for it, and they finally got it, and so I was here, and they opened up 2 new positions. And so I took this position for the assistant director of our 2S LGBTQIA plus services. And so it was just kind of like the right time, right place.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about it and being like so excited because like I said, like I've always wanted to be like a resource and an advocate for rural students, especially queer students, especially BIPOC students, just like students that are especially underserved in these rural communities. But having a take it or leave it attitude isn't like super great for working with school districts.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I was worried about, like how I was going to navigate like dress codes and things. And so it's really nice that I get to do what I've wanted to do, but I get to go over school admin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what do you do in these programs essentially then?
So we've been doing a bunch of stuff. We did some listening sessions a couple months ago, where we were just gathering input on what LGBTQ plus youth and what their parents felt about resources in our community, like whether they're there, whether they're needed, etc. Surprise, general consensus is that there's no resources and that we need them. And then we also did a listening session to get just regular community input. And we've been pushing a school climate survey throughout Eastern Oregon, which is still open and available. And we're just trying to gather more data on like the school climate in Eastern Oregon regarding like 2S LGBTQIA plus students and like what their experiences are. Like, do you feel safe at school? Are there any places you don't feel safe at school? Like, do you avoid those spaces? Have you seen any students bullying? Did anyone report it? Did anything happen when it was reported? Have you witnessed any teachers committing like microaggressions? Did anyone report it? Did anything happen? Because when talking with students in these schools, especially queer students, a lot of the time they do mention that they're experiencing microaggressions from teachers and staff, and they very often don't report it because what do you, you're gonna report the teacher or you're gonna report the principal for being homophobic. Who's gonna come after the principal? The superintendent that's also homophobic, you know? So it's been really important to get that survey out so that we can get that information and kind of prove that these resources are necessary.
Yeah. And are you taking these surveys to the school themselves, or are you kind of posting them online, reaching through like social media platforms, or how are you getting these surveys out there? Because I would assume there's some pushback from some schools that don't want you to be in there. Have you experienced any of that?
Yeah, lots of pushback. So it's been really hard to reach students because it's hard to reach them through social media, just to like get to their pages, if that makes sense. And so we've just done a lot of outreach through schools. And so obviously there's like barriers there where you're trying to reach the students through the homophobic teachers and like the staff. Like for instance, this one school that we called and we were offering the survey and the listening sessions that were happening. When we called and explained what we were doing, the office person asked like what it was for again. And I was like, we're just offering some LGBTQ plus resources for youth, or youth for LGBTQ plus youth, etc. We got resources for the queer kids, basically, is what I was trying to say. And she responded that we only have 80 students. We don't have anyone like that here. Which I was a bit taken aback, even though I really shouldn't have been. I mean, it's a really rural school. But that presents
a problem in itself, though.
Because obviously, like, even if there's only 80 students, mathematically, there's probably like at least 10 queer students there.
If not, some of them are at least questioning it or just curious because they've seen it. It's everywhere, especially during Pride Month. You know, people are celebrating, having a good time, so they're seeing it regardless. So you never know who might be questioning or just curious, wanting to know if the feeling that they're having is similar to that or just something else completely different. So yeah, that in itself I could see being a problem as only 80 students. Yeah, no, that's not.
We don't have any. And then just that one adult has so much power over all of those students and like has just blocked those resources. And so so then, we're probably not getting much data through our survey at schools like that, because like if the adult doesn't want to pass it on, then it doesn't get passed on. And like you're saying, like students are going to see things no matter what, like it's going to cross their minds. And even if like, it's so important for there to be queer representation and like authentic and like true representation, one, so that queer students can see themselves and see a world where they exist, but also so that, straight and cisgendered students see a world where queer people exist and like also see an authentic reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. And what age groups are you working with in youth?
So our survey is for all ages, like kindergarten through college, but our drop-in center is for high schoolers right now. So like 14 to 18.
14 to 18. Okay. And you said from kindergarten to like eighth grade. How, see, this is where I'm curious now because, and I mentioned here on this podcast before, and I'll just repeat it real quickly. I grew up in a really small town, really conservative. We didn't have anyone that was out open. I know I definitely was a part of it back then. We definitely teased people who we thought were a little bit too girly, who were when we knew them. His name was Zach Stoner. He acted a lot differently than us boys, so we always teased him, always called him names. Just did the most terrible things back then. Um, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around that kids like around the age of like 5, 6 already kind of have that self identity within themselves. Do you see a lot of that like
Um,
within a rural Oregon setting?
Believe it or not, yes. In LeGrand, I know of a few youth before, like that aren't even in middle school yet, that have either gender diverse identities or sexualities other than heterosexual.
Okay.
So yeah, even though that's an experience that I didn't have for myself, I know that even in these rural communities, there are like incredibly young people that already know more about themselves than the adults in their lives do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that to me just like mind blowing. I know definitely when I was that age, I was not mature. I was like, I'm gonna be a tiger. I'm gonna be this. I'm gonna be that. I was never mature enough at that age to be able to understand what I liked and to be able to like hear you say that, yeah, there's some kids that they have this already innately within themselves that are leaning towards, being their true self and not being fit into like these binaries, so to say. So that's really interesting to hear. Do you plan on doing anything with the younger youth then
Um,
outside of high school?
Hopefully, in the future, just right now, we just have the resources, to do so much. And with the drop-in center, we just wanted to make sure that it was like a safe and comfortable place. So we don't want to like spread the age too much. But there's most resources I feel are for like high school and college. And so like middle schoolers need resources and elementary students also need resources. And so in the future, I do hope to branch out into helping younger people.
And what would those look like? So like in these meetings or in the what are you guys talking about, or what's the overall goal, or what are you trying to achieve with them?
Well, with the youth network, it's in its very early stages, so we haven't been able to discuss much, but some of them are already really involved in their communities and their communities' pride celebrations. And so I don't know, I like to reflect on that. And it's really about connecting these youth.
Mm-hmm.
Our initial goal was to get one youth from each county in Region 5 to be this network and to kind of serve as advocates for their communities and for their peers and kind of report to us what needs there are so that we can help implement supports. And yeah, it's just kind of an advocacy opportunity. And so I don't know if we would have a youth network for elementary students per
Yeah.
se. Maybe a middle school one that could kind of bridge into the regular high school one. Um, yeah.
Okay. And then how about instead of the youth, how about the older generation? Is there any plans or visions to kind of get connected with them, especially for maybe it could be parents who have children that are part of that, or who are having a hard time adjusting to their child not fitting what their standard would be, or older people who are starting to question themselves or have been living different lives, separate lives, don't know how to come out. Is there like plans to do something for like the older population?
Well, USCIL has their Freedom to Express program, which
Mm-hmm.
existed before I worked here.
Yeah.
And it's since kind of fallen through the cracks a bit. And I hope to, in the near future, get that going again and to have that ongoing meeting and resource for older queer adults. So there's that. There's also PFLAG. Have you heard of PFLAG?
No, I haven't.
Again, I don't remember the whole acronym, but it's, I believe, Parents and Friends of Lesbian and Gay People, question mark. And it's a national organization, and there's local chapters, and it's kind of like what you were describing, just something for like parents and friends and allies, and to kind of group together and work together to support the queer people in their lives.
Okay.
And so I know that there's a chapter in Pendleton, but I don't know of any other Eastern Oregon chapters, and that would be worth looking into starting in the Ontario area or in other Eastern Oregon communities.
And are there other groups like that, or is that there's just like the main one here in rural Oregon that people can like kind of go look at and get like information or see if they might be interested in something like that?
Like, is there,
Like another P flag, so to say. Are there other?
not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's other like local like organizations. Like there's like one community, All Spirits here. But um PFLAG is like the main one that I'm aware of. And like I said, it's a national organization, but there's local chapters. And
Yeah.
so you can open a chapter anywhere.
Okay. Well, no, that's really good to know because definitely if like people are listening to this and want to know more, first of all, is there anywhere that you would like them to go, like besides our website, to get connected with you and find your contact info on there? But is there anywhere else that like maybe that you visited, like websites, organizations that you found really useful for yourself that people should maybe look out if they're interested?
One resource that I really like is the Safe Zone Project. And that's like a training that you can host or go to. But they have lots of resources on that website. So just the Safe Zone Project. There's also, of course, like the Trevor Project.
See that Trevor project, that's the one I've been seeing the most. So um in my spare time, I normally am like watching videos on YouTube and it'll just be the most random stuff. But I get ads for the Trevor Project all the time, and then I'm scrolling through Instagram, I'll see ads there. Facebook, I get a lot of ads for the Trevor Project. What is that one? Because that one's a big one, I assume.
I'm actually not incredibly familiar with the
No.
Trevor Project, but I also know that it's like one of the main significant resources that people go to, and I know that they like have a hotline, and just offer other resources towards that. That's like just the most attainable resource, I think, because they've done such a good job with their advertisement and their outreach. It's kind of like a household name almost, I'd say, because like you know about it, I know about
Yeah.
it, and so people at least know to Google it and go there.
Yeah, and well, and the other like really good thing is that they're like doing a really good job then of spreading it because personally, I don't have anything on my like YouTube page because anything I watch on there is just all like mechanical art, like engineering videos.
Mhm.
So it's not even human, it's just machines. And I get all these ads that are suggested to me. And it's really nice to be able to see that it's being able to reach everyone. And it doesn't matter. I don't have to be specifically looking for that to get those ads, and I'm not like on the far end of the other spectrum where I'm watching all this anti support, all this hate stuff, and I'm getting those ads. I'm like right in the middle. I'm not searching for anything, and I'm still getting them. So it is reaching the people. As far as like reaching people in your outreach portion, besides dropping off the surveys to the schools, how else are you getting connected with people or trying to spread the word about your programs and services?
Word of mouth has been the most successful thing, like to get youth into our drop-in center. Like just kind of finding one or two youth that are reachable, and then having them tell their friends about the resources that we have. That's been the most successful, but we go to libraries and cafes and other community spots where youth might go and just do a lot of advertisement there.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, um, I'll go ahead and start wrapping up. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and talk for a little bit about, your whole journey and then what you're doing right now with the OCIO. I think it's really great and amazing. And I've seen people here at the office come in looking for you. And it's really nice to see that these kids and these young adults are able to have a safe place to come and, either get advice, feel supported, be an advocate for them. So I really want to thank you for that. So is there any final messages you would like to let the people know of, maybe where to find you, or just a key takeaway from today?
Well, you can reach me via email at maryellenbuxton@eocil.org. And you can reach me at 541-709-8911. I don't know. I don't really have any huge concluding statements other than queer people exist, and they've always existed, and they'll continue to exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and one main thing I really want to, your drop-in centers, they're located in Ontario right now, right? Are they going to be opening up other ones in the other offices?
Yeah, so we have our Ontario one up and going, and in the near future, we're going to have one in Pendleton, and then hopefully in the next year, maybe we'll have one in the Grand.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you so much then for your time. And as you heard, we have a drop-in center here in Ontario, so please feel free to drop on by anytime. They're held on Wednesdays.
So our school year hours are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 to 5, but our summer hours are going to be every day, 3 to 5, or Monday through Friday, 3 to 5.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you so much. And I'll make sure to have all this information down in the description below, so that way people know the times, or they'll be directing to the website. But thank you, Marilyn, so much for joining me and sharing your experience and what you're doing for the community.
Thank you for having me.
Live your life within the moment.
And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to today's episode of Voices in Action, a podcast brought to you by Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living. If you have any questions about any of the topics that we covered today, I encourage everyone to check us out online at www.eocil.org, or you can visit us at one of our 5 office locations located at Ontario, LeGrand, Burns, Pendleton, and the Dalles. And once again, thank you for listening to Voices in Action. And we would like to give a quick thanks to Miss Hudson and Mr. English for their donations to help support Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living. It's donations like yours that help the community grow stronger. Thank you.